a lot of the guys that I used to work with were injured constantly and would work with a cast or with a splint, or, or we would have to go to the merch table and we couldn't work, for that loop or something.
Right.
You're not getting hurt. How does one do that? Because how are you so safe in the ring?
First of all, it's not me. Like, I'm not fighting myself. I mean, that'd be a hell of a match. I'd be impressed, but it would be, but I don't know. I can't explain it. I never let it happen. And a couple of times I have a couple concussions, which totally happens. And also I was at, 04, 05. It was still not Wild West Attitude Era, but it was, I was just telling the story to my brother the other day. I pulled my groin in a match. It was at the time where every year after WrestleMania, I was nervous that I was getting fired. This is a couple years in. And you go, oh, I pulled my groin. Wow, this one really hurts. What should I do? And they're like, well, do you want us to tell Vince? Are you okay with losing your spot? And you're like, no, I'll work through it. So it's like, it's not Attitude Era. I need this, there's no salary coming in. There's no, you lose your spot if you get hurt. So I eventually, making up for it, pulled 2 groins because I was making up for the other one. And at that point, I'm getting wrapped around my waist and both groins before each match. I was getting injections into my thighs. And it was usually myself and Kofi. And I had the U.S. title, the Intercontinental title. And I would put a bag of ice inside the title in between my trunks. And I'd wear it for the 15 minutes going out there. And then I'd pull up the title like this and the bag of ice would fall out. And I would start a match. And it was kind of fun. But it was also like, hey, are you cool with losing your spot? And at the time, you're like, oh, my God, I can't lose my spot. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds. I'm not a legacy. I don't have anyone rooting for me in the meetings. No, I cannot lose that spot. I'll fight through it. So there is that aspect of I did get injuries all the time, like we all do, but somehow never got that very serious one where you leave. But also that affected me a little bit negatively, because if you have Triple H tearing his quad and then he comes back 9 months later and the place erupts because we missed this guy that we know. I never got to have that moment once or twice, or some guys get it 15 times. I got it 0 times. So I feel like that also hurt a little bit. So there's a positive and a negative there, I guess.
Yeah. Well, here's my theory on you. Now, again, I didn't know you when you work there. I'm getting to know you now. Watching you as a fan and seeing the way you perform and the people you perform with, and who you're putting over week after week. You're there for 19 years, but as I'm watching you, I'm saying to myself, they're not using him correctly. There's so much more, because I see a star compared to other people. I'm not going to name others. I'm not, I see a star. And the way that sometimes, they put a belt on you here and there, but the way that they used you, in my opinion, I feel like there was so much more they always could have done. But you lasted 19 years. Do you feel like there was some heat that you didn't know about, that they had their thumb on you? There might have been somebody politicking against you. Were you aware of anything going on?
Yeah, of course. And it's a couple of things that I said earlier. One, it's either nobody's rooting for you in the meeting because you're not 6'5" or 300 pounds, or you're not Vince or Hunter's favorite guy, so no one's going to be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, boss, I like him too. There's not one of those things. And then there's also the other extreme to where Pat Patterson was a big fan of mine, and he was more of a consultant. So some months he's there every TV, sometimes he's talking to Vince all the time, and then some months he's just gone for a few because he was a little bit older and he's enjoying his life, he's on vacation and stuff, but also he come help out. So sometimes there's nobody there, and if nobody's got your back, it's kind of tricky already. I'm not a legacy. I don't have any inside information, or nobody's looking out for you. But also, I got to a point where the top of the top, other than Vince, pulled me aside and said, Pat pushes for you so much because he says such great things and sees such great things in you that we're now actively ribbing him by having you lose every week. And I go,
that's terrible.
That's a funny, and he laughed when he said it. I go, that's funny, but that's my career. That's already, I lose 80% of the time, not losing 95% of the time. Come on, that's not. And they thought it was a cool thing to tell me. So again, this is anecdotal, secondhand information. It's not something I witnessed personally, but people in the meetings would tell you like, oh yeah, anytime this thing was set up, these two guys would go like, no, we don't like him. And they go, okay, on to the next guy. And it just, I mean, it's showbiz. That's how it works. But it's, yeah, that's, of course, part of the deal. And there's a million amazing, amazing moments that I got to be a part of,
Right.
or that were based around me, that the memories will never, ever go away. And the fans have them too. It's just that I think that there's that extra part of there's no follow-up because there's no one in a meeting going, okay, now we're going with this guy, right? And they're like, nah, we're good. And so the next day, so it's weird to complain. You're like, hey, you won like 20 titles and you were the world champion. It's like, yes, that's fantastic. And I cherish that. But also the next day, every time I won those titles, I lost 92 times in a row, including the day the week I became world heavyweight champion. I lost the next match. Like, so, and that's, again, it's showbiz. That's part of the deal. But also it just goes, okay, if the company's not behind him, eventually the fans will not, because they understand like, oh, what's the point of this? But they stuck around a lot longer than they should have, I think, because of the work ethic and everything that was put forward by me.
Yeah, when you say longer than they should have, I don't agree with that statement at all. I mean, you have a huge fan base. They admire your work and your work ethic. So they're fans, period. They're not just going to give up on you because you lose. Because
right,
the
but
ones
you
know it's not
to,
you losing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you get to a point where it was, you know, I study the metrics behind the scenes and the ratings and all that stuff and different things. And you go, it's one thing when people my age go, oh, Dolph's going to put out a good match and he's going to lose. And then it got to a point where 10-year-old kids are going, we know you're losing. And then you get to a point where 6 and 8-year-old kids are like, oh, I can't wait to see you. Like, so you get to a point where the fans are still hanging around longer than they should, but the office is telling them, don't waste your time. You're going to see a cool thing. And for a split second, you're going to forget that you know this guy's losing. And that was my goal every time, is to get 1 or 2 split seconds where it goes, oh, because that's what I was up against. And I thought I did that pretty damn well. But every once in a while, it's just, there's nothing. And then somebody's hurt and they go, you're fighting Sheamus in the world title match. And 99% of an entire crowd is cheering for the bad guy as loud as they possibly can for the
Right.
entire match. And I go, damn it, hell yeah, we can still get him.
Because you're that guy that the office counts on to make everyone look good. Because they feel you can't have a bad match. But you're not the guy that's going to get the push.
Right. And so that's, you pick one or the other. Or I even tried it. Someone high up was like, stop taking this finish so well. Stop being bumping. And I go, I tried it once. I tried it at a live event to like not give everything. And the timing was off and it was weird. And I go, no, for a split second, I go, maybe I can. No, I can't. I can only do it as best as I can because I have to sleep at night, even for an hour or two. And so it's either like, I know I'm not going to be the franchise guy, but every couple of months I go, I can get, if I can just get them to think this way, I can get a couple months out of it and make the most of it. So it's also, if you can take that finish, fantastic. You're going to take it every week, but also you're going to take it every week for 20 years and you're going to build a legacy and get paid. And then on the weekends, you can go do 25 minutes with Kofi and tear it down and have the best time of your life.
So they want you to take it, but take it like not to the potential that you can. Is that
just a couple people were trying to almost like look out for me and saying you take this too well. Like the first time I took Sheamus's finish, they go, holy shit, are you okay? And I go,
it's at work, brother.
Boss, it's my job to make it look like I got killed. And they're like, oh
right.
my God. So if you're working the boss and then the next time he's like, so it's like, oh cool, I'm doing something great. And then it gets into like, ooh, I don't know who's winning the world title tonight, but let's make sure we get that Sheamus kick on Dolph because it's going to look so good. And you're like, so then it got to a point where I think there was a couple of months on SmackDown where I was just fighting Sheamus for no reason because they wanted to see me take his finish. And I get it because there's some pretty great gifs out there, GIFs, whatever. I'm like, it looks awesome because I had to do it great. And then, but then also after 30 matches, when you're 1-29, you're like, how do you make this guy the world champ? How do you make him credible? How do we follow him around in a long-term storyline?
Right.
So it's good with bad.